Well, this is Jared with Stampede Blue. This is your Indianapolis Colts postgame wrap. I'm not going to lie, I had to re-record this one because I kept pounding on my desk as I was making my points. But anyway, the Colts did win today on the road in Houston, 27-24, and they control their destiny. If the Colts win out against the Jags, Titans, and Cowboys, they'll be 10-6. And all things considered, I think if they win out, I think they're the only 7-6 team that can realistically potentially win out, right? Because the 6th seed going into today was Baltimore, and they were 7-5, and they lost in overtime to the Chiefs, 27-24, and Lamar Jackson went down in overtime injured, and the Ravens play the Raiders, Chargers, and Browns to finish their season. And I'm afraid that if it's Joe Flacco or kind of a dinged-up Lamar Jackson, they may not win out. They may not make the playoffs. And the Colts appear to be in the driver's seat, right? Because the other teams vying for that 6th seed are Miami and Tennessee, whom the Colts have already beat. And then, of course, Denver's 6-6 going into this game, just like the Colts. And they're locked up with San Francisco right now. We'll kind of see what happens. But the Colts won today on offense because T.Y. Hilton did T.Y. things, right? 9 catches on 12 targets for 199 yards. T.Y. Hilton just broke Marvin Harrison's record for the most games in a Colts uniform over 150 yards receiving with 11. And then that first-round draft pick bust, Eric Ebron, with no hands that people keep talking about, now has 12 touchdown catches on the season. He had 11 in 4 years in Detroit, so a change of scenery will do you good, right? And then Andrew Luck is Andrew Luck. 27 for 41, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns. And yes, he threw an interception. And yes, he was sacked twice. And yes, there were some times where the offensive line looked vulnerable, but they held, and not literally. And Andrew Luck escaped, and made plays downfield. And the Colts won today because Andrew Luck, in a short period of time, has learned that he's got to trust his other receivers. That you have to be able to line up and hit Zach Pascal on an out route for 14 yards with 2 minutes and 38 seconds left in the fourth quarter, instead of lining up there in the fourth quarter and going run, try to pass, punt. The Colts passed on first down. And then, of course, after that, got 6 yards on 2 runs to put themselves in a 3rd and 4. And then they lined up heavy left. And with right around 2 minutes left in the game, they forced Jadeveon Clowney to jump off sides because they lined up heavy his way. So not only was he thinking about which one of those people is going to try to hit me, but then we also lined up and went hard count on him. I don't think the Colts ever intended to run a play, but that's not the point. Clearly, the Colts could have done what lots of teams do, which is run up and snap the ball really fast, right? Probably try to run it too, or who knows what dumb play we would have tried to run there, right? But instead of doing that, they did what a disciplined football team tries to do first: is take advantage of a defense that wants to get upfield and rush the passer. And you put yourself into one of those downs where not only is it going to pay dividends for that defensive end to get upfield, when they line up heavy on you, you know you're going to have to be off the ball in a jiffy. And the Colts, they answered some questions that I had going into the game, right? First, I wondered if the Colts on defense could shut down DeAndre Hopkins, who over the course of his career has kind of given the Colts the business, right? But he didn't do that today. 4 catches on 10 targets for 48 yards. Pierre Desir, Kenny Moore, those guys deserve credit. They bottled up one of the best receivers in the NFL. And then when it came to Deshaun Watson, he made a couple plays with his feet, and he was 27 for 38 for 268 yards, but he was sacked 5 times. The Colts blitzed today. And in my opinion, this Colts defense is playing fantastic football. Darius Leonard had 12 tackles. He had a tackle for a loss, a sack, and a pass breakup on DeAndre Hopkins. Again, one of the best receivers in the league. Anthony Walker had 11 tackles. Clayton Gathers had 9. Pierre Desir had 7. So the Colts are getting a lot of effort out of a lot of players. And then guys like Marcus Hunt had a sack. Danico Autry had pressure on had a sack and multiple pressures on Deshaun Watson. And then Muhammad came in there and he also got a sack. The cornerbacks are blitzing. The linebackers are making plays and stacking up guys. They limited the Houston run game. And I'd say that Houston did the same thing, right? But we kind of knew that was going to happen going into it. Houston's one of the best teams in the league on defense. So it's a top 10 defense. And the Colts basically won this game because they went up tempo, right? The first quarter and a half, both teams are running scripted offense and defense. And when you do that, you line up in the huddle between plays and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. I don't think that's where the Colts are good. I hate to say it, but I think the Colts are young, and I think the Colts can feast on teams when they go up tempo because we're in better shape. And that really showed you. For a quarter and a half, the Colts ran a scripted offense and punted on 3 of 4 possessions. And then about halfway through the second quarter, the Colts went up tempo, scored 14 points in less than 8 minutes, and the game really was over at halftime if you really want to talk about it, because Houston doesn't play well from behind. One of the things that you need to know about that 9-game winning streak of theirs is that they weren't losing those games. They scored first, then they play good defense, and then you really don't have to do a lot on offense when Houston's defense shuts people out in like 16 of the last 32 quarters, right? Basically half of all games, they're not even allowing a touchdown. So, questions that the Colts had going into the game was, can T.Y. Hilton get loose? Got loose. Can you bottle up Deshaun Watson and limit his effectiveness as a runner? I think he had like 10 carries for 25 yards. And then can you limit DeAndre Hopkins? Check on all 3 boxes. Yeah, we did give up a turnover, but when the defense plays like it does, and you're able to pass on first down because you realize that this week, the weakness on the defense was at the secondary level, and the Colts showed that today. Almost all the receivers had good games, with Dontrell Inman out, and then Ryan Grant went down with an injury. We certainly hope he's okay. And even Marlon Mack. T.Y. Hilton came out the game a little ginger there late, but when you've basically been in a track meet all day, these things are going to happen, right? And there did look, of course, like the Colts offensive line continues to just not be as stellar as they'd been, right, without Ryan Kelly in the middle. But Beam does fine. He doesn't appear to be losing us games, right? So we don't have like missed and bobbled snaps and low snaps or high snaps, or he's snapping the ball too late or too early. None of those things are happening. So it tells me that he's fit in well there. And then the Colts just are in control at this point. All they really have to do is win out, which is not where I think we thought we'd be. Starting off 1-5. And then, of course, winning 5 in a row, and then dropping that game last week was like a shot to the chest, right? But again, I'll say last week's win is a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. That Jacksonville defense has some pride. That's a great defense. There's a lot of great individual defensive players on that Jacksonville defense. None of them will be there next year. So the Colts won because this week that Houston defense is not once in a generation. You'll never see that. That defense is going to get better. They're going to get some secondary players, and they're going to come back with a fury. And the Colts aren't winning their division this year. But I'll take beating the division winner on the road, snapping their 9-game winning streak, because I don't want any more AFC South banners. I don't want any AFC Championship runner-up banners. I want Super Bowls. And you win Super Bowls by being aggressive. And that's exactly what the Colts did today. And it panned out today. Instead of going 0 for 3 on 4th down like we did last week and getting embarrassed on the road and giving up a goose egg, the Colts were aggressive when it was the right play. They even kicked Vinny kicked a 54-yard field goal today. So it's finding that sweet blend between being aggressive when it matters late in the game, 2:38 left, when you throw on first down to Pascal, approve. Take the points too, right? Even though it was a long field goal, Colts were playing for a field goal, and they did exactly that. Andrew Luck even threw the ball away on 3rd down, and what I actually thought he could have tried to complete that pass. But he just threw it out of bounds. Take a field goal. Take the points. So it's with that we say, hey, we're in the driver's seat for the 6th seed. Really will depend on the outcome of the Denver-San Francisco game as to what the Colts will have to do moving forward. But it's going to be tight to the end. But here we are. after 14 weeks of football, the Colts are currently tied for the lead in the wild card. You take that most seasons, right? Yeah. And I think as long as we stay reasonably healthy and get healthier, right? It'd be real nice to get Ryan Kelly back. It'd be real nice to be able to run the football. But in games like this, when you change tempo on your opponent and you score quickly, right? A couple questions got answered on a single drive. Can we pass the ball deep? Can you run the ball up the middle and score? Did both those things. So I answered every question I had today. And I was really happy to see Frank Reich take a step forward as a coach after last week and saying, hey, here's why I did it. It didn't work. We're still going to do it moving forward because the data says we should. And then also at the same time learning and growing and adapting and those things, being malleable, those things are important in leadership. So the Colts have great leadership. They have great commanding offense that's going to put up points and gonna require you gonna have to cover either Ty or Eric Ebron, and you can't cover both. And yeah, this has been Jared with Stampede Blue. This is your Indianapolis Colts post game wrap, and we will see you after next week's game.